Hey cinema fans, welcome back to another movie review. Today we got The Golden Eye. Brosnan's performance achieves a darker tone while giving a more realistic take on James Bond. I feel like this film was the answer of what can you do next for James Bond in the franchise, because all the films before this, it's a little bit, campy, a little bit over the top, little of, the typical James Bond film, but I feel like this film takes it in a different direction that later on kind of complements what Daniel Craig's Jason Bond does, but this film definitely takes a more darker, realistic, grounded tone to the Jason Bond that we know and love, for the whole franchise. It takes it more seriously. The best equivalent I would say to that is look at the Marvel films, all the comic book superhero films before, Batman Begins or the Spider-Man trilogy. Films before that, they never really took those films seriously, and this does the same thing for the James Bond franchise. And that whole run this whole run of Brosnan's run. I mean, this film is regarded as one of the best James Bond films. And here's the thing about this film, when it came out, and I wasn't alive for it, but looking back on it and looking at the franchise leading up to this film had a lot to write on it. It had to, give this new fresh of life to the James Bond franchise, but it gave a darker and more grounded tone. And also on top of that, it was in a way of a test to see if there is even an audience for the James Bond franchise. And this film, I think, delivers that on every front. And honestly, from the music to the action to the acting to the special effects to the overtopness of James Bond, and still make it grounded and darker of a tone, it does its job, and it works for me personally. And honestly, I would give this film a solid 8.5 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and follow for more. Hey cinema fans, welcome back to another movie review. Today we got Tomorrow Never Dies. So I feel like this film brings a non-stop fun action thrill to this film, and I think it does it very well. It makes it very, very entertaining. But unlike the first film had this dark, gritty tone to it. And well, not gritty, but a darker tone to it. In this film, it does feel like it does take a back step to that, to bring in some of the older ways of the James Bond franchise would do, and it kind of has a lot of James Bond cliches to it. It does have an amazing James Bond girl, but a off-brand villain or threat that comes into this film, and it's not my favorite. It's just not something I would go to rewatch. Now, if I was rewatching, Brosnan's a whole run for James Bond, I definitely am watching this film. But that's the only reason why. I mean, the acting is fair. It's fair. It's great. The plot, it's the simplest James Bond plot ever, but overall, I have to give it, I give it a solid 6.8 out of 10. And oh, one more thing, I have to say, the thing that really irks me as a film moviegoer is that I'll see a film that does not deliver whatsoever, but the score is top notch. The score never matches up with the film. I mean, some films out there do that beautifully, like Inception, Interstellar, and the Dark Knight trilogy, but this film does not live up to what the score is giving to the film. And the score is, awesome. It's just so good. It just doesn't line up to the film, and that's the disappointing part of this whole film. But is what it is. Thank you for watching, and follow for more. Okay, welcome back to another movie review. Today we got The World Is Not Enough. Another glorious Brosnan installment to the James Bond run of his. A pair of remarkable villains, a sizable role for M, a sadly but bittersweet end for Q, and a showcase of Brosnan's arguably best performance as James Bond. And honestly, this film has a lot going for it, and it's definitely a step up from the second one. But is it as good as GoldenEye? No. And the pacing definitely is sacrifice, and there is no complexity to this. It really, that's the thing about this film. And the score is fair. Compared to the second one where it was really good, but the film itself wasn't. The third one, it's just, I guess if kids say nowadays, here I am saying kids nowadays, say mid. This film, I would definitely, I hate saying mid because it's such a dumb way to give, I'm not gonna say it mid. It's a fair James Bond film. It's not as good as GoldenEye, but it's not as bad as Tomorrow Never Dies. And just like I said for the score, Brosnan does such a fantastic job in this film. His acting is top notch, but it does not align with the plot and the complexity of the film, the story, the plot. That's the problem with the whole Brosnan run, is that he does it perfectly in the first film, but then the second film, it does nothing for Brosnan and the whole arcing run of Brosnan's run as James Bond. And this film is it's not a letdown, but it's like, it doesn't leave you satisfied. I give this film a 6.5 out of 10. So welcome back to another movie review. Today we got Die Another Day. It's definitely a vigorous installment with strong, great action, but it is weak on the interpersonal stuff. But it is simply outlandish and unbelievable, to the point that it becomes very difficult not to care about the story. And the most aggravating part is that you look at GoldenEye, and it was such a great start to the franchise. Well, the run of Brosnan's run. But second one goes downhill. The third one kind of goes up a roller coaster. But imagine the third one going up a roller coaster, and you think it's going to stay at the top, but then this film kind of brings it back down. But not as bad as the second one with Tomorrow Never Dies, but it's not even a good closure to Brosnan's run as James Bond 2. I mean, it does feel like when he acts in this role, in this film, it does feel like he's kind of more comfortable as James Bond than the other past films, even the first one, but it's, compared to the Daniel Craig run or even all the past James Bond franchise runs, this film was definitely a big, if not the biggest letdown, because it's not as bad as the second one, but it's a biggest letdown because it's supposed to be the final installment to Brosnan's run. And I feel like he had a great run in a way, but compared to Daniel Craig's run and the closure we got with him, it's nothing compared. It cannot be compared to him, because don't get me wrong, I love him as James. I love Brosnan as James Bond, but it just does not. The character works. The score most of the time works. The action does live up to what is literally the title is giving you, but from the plot itself and how simple it is for the rest of the franchise, except for the first one, it irks me, kind of aggravates me how they kind of, like, in a way, like they would say, they massacred my boy. It just feels like they didn't really care for how they wanted to wrap this whole run up. I give this film a 6.2 out of 10.